24/7 News. This is Toyota Sports Talk.
Hello and welcome into Toyota Sports Talk. We are so glad you decided to spend your night with us here. I'm Natalie Spala in for Scott Abraham tonight, and we are bringing you some incredible guests with a lot of great insight on both the Commanders and the U.S. Women's National Team. We are starting things off by bringing in our guy, Lake Lewis Jr. He is our Washington Commanders and NFL insider. We're going to talk all about that first preseason game, what he grades the Commanders' performance and his concerns as well for this team moving forward. And then later on in the show, we're going to bring in our Washington Post soccer insider, Stephen Goff. We are going to be talking about really just what went wrong with this early departure we saw from the U.S. Women's National Team. We'll get his take on also the growth of this women's sport and how things are getting a lot more competitive for the women's team. We have a lot going on tonight, so sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Toyota Sports Talk. Joining us now is Lake Lewis Jr. He is with ABC News. He's also an NFL and Commanders insider. It's the perfect guy to chat Commanders with. How you doing, Lake?
Hey, how are you today? And welcome aboard, by the way.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Everyone has been so welcoming to DC, and I'll throw you into that category now, so I appreciate it.
You're doing a great job.
I appreciate it. Well, we are talking Commanders. We are talking preseason Commanders now. It is finally here, and that first preseason game is now behind us. What would be your grade for this team?
You know, I'm probably going to give them a B, maybe a B minus, but, you know, I saw some good things out there. The defense, you know, was getting moved on early in the opening drive for Cleveland, but they held the fort at the very end and got off the field, so you have to give them credit for that. And then I think the backups on defense were making plays throughout the evening. Obviously, they gave up a touchdown, but they were making plays out there, so that's a positive. If you look at the offensive side of the ball, Sam Howell looked sharp, but he was under duress, and that's going to be a problem, Natalie. I mean, we know that the offensive line right now is a little, I don't want to use the word suspect, but they're a little suspect. And, you know, he was under duress, but he made some great plays, and I think overall you saw Eric Bieniemy's offense. It was spreading the ball around, and that's a plus as well.
Yeah, let's chat about Sam Howell a bit. You say he was under duress, but his composure was one of the things that stood out to me. Would you agree that you think he did a great job in kind of handling the pressure from the Browns?
Absolutely. I mean, he looked poised back there. For this to be technically his, you know, second start as a pro, you know, I think he held himself up pretty well, and you know, he got sacked a couple times. You know, and a lot of times with younger quarterbacks, you know, they can kind of go in the tank when they feel like they're under pressure all the time. But he stood in the pocket strong.
Now, you mentioned that offensive line, and that has been a big question mark for this team when you look at kind of week 1, week 2, week 3 now of training camp.
I mean, I got to be honest with you, I'm concerned because, you know, if you look at everything else on offense, their skill set at receivers loaded, running back, they have a nice tandem with Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson and Chris Rodriguez, the rookie. But unfortunately, this offensive line, which has been anemic for Washington pretty much since the days of Trent Williams and Brandon Sheriff Morgan Moses, you know, they're questionable right now. And I think that, you know, they brought in Andrew Wiley from Kansas City. He knows the offense, you know, but he had guys going by him. And the problem I have, honestly, Natalie, is with this is that we saw in training camp that, you know, people were saying, well, you know, look at what they're going up against. This is going to be one of the best defensive fronts in all of football. And that is true. But the problem with that is that they're getting beat quite a bit by that front. And they're going to play some pretty good defensive fronts along the way. They had one in Cleveland, and they didn't look too good. So hopefully they can shore some things up or maybe give some younger guys. You know, there's a guy named Mason Brooks that I'm pretty high on. Maybe they put him in there and see what he can do with the first team. So we'll see what happens.
You mentioned a specific guy. Now, is there someone who stood out to you in this first preseason game that you're going to be keeping kind of an extra eye on now that we're looking ahead to Baltimore?
Well, you know, I'm going to be biased. I'm sure the guys in the studio told you I'm a Penn Stater, so we are. I'm always going to go there. But listen, Jahan Dotson looks, I mean, he's special. We knew that last year, his rookie season. You know, he did have an injury that cost him 5 games, but he still led all rookie receivers in touchdowns, and he missed 5 games. So you naturally think with him this year going, you know, pairing up with Terry McLaurin for a full season, I mean, this could be one of the best 1-2 punches in the NFL. I mean, they're that talented. I think Jahan Dotson stood out to me. he just makes plays whenever he gets the ball in his hands.
Yeah, and especially that 26-yard shot from Howell to the end zone. I think that kind of revamped and got some momentum on this Commanders team. Is there one play that stood out to you? That's the play for me, but is there a play that stood out to you that really just made you think, wow, this team has the potential to do something special this year?
Believe it or not, it was on defense, and it was actually towards the end of that opening drive where Deshaun Watson had taken Cleveland down the field, and it was Emmanuel Forbes making a big tackle. And everyone talks about how small he is, and he is small, let's be honest. He's skinny. But, I mean, this guy comes from the SEC, where he was all SEC for 2 years. He's played against first-round receivers that are, tearing it up in the NFL, and he held his own. So I just think we have to probably put that to bed a little bit because he's tough, and I think he showed that on that defensive stance. Him and Montez Sweat were back there, but Emmanuel Forbes came up and made a big hit, and that's what you want to see from your young corner.
100%. I want to switch gears a bit and just talk about Josh Harris really quickly. We saw him in the front row. He got the game ball as well. He was getting hit by all the rains, but he stayed in that front row all the way through. What does that say about his commitment and really the commitment he pledged when he took over this team?
I think the fans want to see this, and it's not, for show. It's not just because the cameras are there. He's very unassuming, actually. He's the owner, but he deflects that when you say, even in the locker room, we got the game ball. He was like, it's us. It's not just him. And I think that that's a breath of fresh air considering what we've had to endure. So I think with Josh Harris, being front and center, let's face it, this guy's a sports owner. He's got two other teams that do well. So he knows what's expected of him. And he keeps saying over and over and over, we just got to get the job done. So he's not in, I just bought the team, whatever happens this year is whatever. No, he's in win mode right now.
Yeah, certainly a game changer. Now looking ahead to Baltimore, you got to imagine things are going to be improved upon. Adjustments are going to be made throughout this next week of training camp. What is something you're looking forward to specifically, you're hoping to see in that Baltimore game?
Well, I want to see the defense start faster. I mean, they talk about this all off season, how they want to start games faster and kind of impose themselves on their opponent from the very beginning. And I think for them, they know that their defense is going to be the catalyst for them this year. They have to have, one of those special seasons if this team's going to make the playoffs. So this would be a good litmus test for this defense.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Well, we appreciate your insight as always. Lake Lewis Jr. joining us tonight. We appreciate you so much, Lake.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Good seeing you finally.
Good seeing you too. Thanks so much. Stay with us. We'll be back here in just a few minutes.